All right, Kevin, back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And today I'm here with David Deutsch. David, welcome. So awesome to have you on the show today.
Well, thank you. It's awesome to be here.
Yeah, I have really been looking forward to this. And you and I got to talk a week or so ago, and man, you and I have been running in the same circles for years, for like
Mhm.
20 plus years. And I don't I don't know how much you've known of me, but I've known of you for years. And then Jessica, over at the podcast guest platform. I love Jessica. She's kind of like become my personal concierge, and she's like sending me messages regularly saying, "Kev, I think this person would be a really great person for you to interview for your podcast." And you were one that she recently sent over. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I know of David." And
I'm gonna have to
you know,
thank her for that.
Oh, trust me, I did thank her. I love Jessica, and she has never, not once, has she ever steered me wrong. Every time she's reached out to me, uh, she was right on, and most of the time, I've done interviews with the people that she's
Mhm.
suggested and stuff, and it's also kind of cool that when you and I did connect the first time, we've got a lot of mutual friends, but we've got some in particular. I mean, one in particular that you and I are both really close with, which is Brian Kurtz.
Mhm.
And when you have such close mutual friends that we both have so much respect and appreciation for, it makes it so. I mean, like, David, when you and I connected for the first time a week or so ago, it was like we were like friends and had known each other for years because we have these mutual friends in common, and it just is what a beautiful testament to the power of relationships, which is what this podcast is all about.
It really is. Now, here's an interesting question. I don't mean
Okay.
to sidetrack us onto a rabbit hole. Do you think that's because we have mutual friends in common, or do you think that having mutual friends in common is kind of a filtering system that the type of people Brian is friends with is a certain type of people? Then when that certain type of people meets, there's a connection.
Absolutely. That is totally a filtering system, 100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. And Brian is one of those. In fact, I know before we hit the record button, we were talking about Perry Marshall, and
Mhm.
and Brian and Perry Marshall was the very first connection that I made. I connected those two guys 12 years ago. That those two guys and what they did after I introduced them and the stuff that they went on to do. I mean, even over the course of the next year, that's what really got me thinking. Wouldn't it be cool if I had a business where I got to do that all the time? And
Mhm.
the seed got planted, and now we fast forward today, 12 years later, that's my full time gig, and it has been now for 7 years.
Wow. What an amazing thing to just be able to
Yeah,
people
yeah.
all the time.
So, I mean, I am incredibly appreciative of Brian, of Perry, and the relationship that I have with both of those guys, and it goes back years,
Mhm.
and so what I'd like to do is kind of start off by turning it over to you, David, so we can set a little bit of context and let the listeners know more about like who you are. So let's have you share, kind of, what you do, who you serve, what inspires you most about the work that you get to do. We'll just kind of start there.
Yeah, I basically help people to write better, to
Okay.
copyright. I work with people directly that are writers. A lot of times those are people that own their own business. I work with, and they write, they're kind of business owners that write for their own business for themselves.
Okay. Okay.
I work with people who have a company and they have a team of writers. So I'll work with them, I'll work with their team. Maybe they're a creative director, and they've got a team of copywriters. I'll help train. For some people, I kind of function as a fractional creative director. In
Okay.
other words, I, review copy, I help the copywriters, I mentor the copywriters. Um, Sometimes I'll actually work with people and I'll either write the copy from scratch, which I try not to do, because really what I love to do is to take copy that's already been written and make it more powerful. Take
Okay.
copy that's not working and make it work. Take copy that maybe is now out of date and make some tweaks to it that makes it work in today's environment.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha. Got. So I can tell by the way you're talking right now. So I'm just going to point this out. Well, for one, how long have you been doing what you do, David?
Oh, decades,
Decades.
decades, 30, 40 years.
Because you know you are like a world class master at doing what you do, and you've been, like you said, been doing it for decades. Um, Nobody who just heard you say what you did would put two and two together. So I want to make sure that they understand this. And so what? And you don't necessarily have to, reveal names or companies or anything like that. But what is a project that you've worked on that you were just incredibly proud of because you helped somebody get just really phenomenal results? What's an example of something like that?
Well, a lot of, I guess what I'm proudest of is just personal, type stuff in terms of helping someone that I know. There was a well-known speaker that was
Okay.
doing seminars, John Assaraf.
Okay.
Um, he was, and I helped him do the first letter for this special, training that he was doing, and it was just very successful. And he's very kind in terms of giving me a lot of credit for, really kicking that off to a good start and the effect that letter had. So that felt, really nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
There, I like working on projects where it's kind of a challenge. One of the first things I did for Boardroom, which was a big publisher,
Yep.
they had a book on estate taxes.
Okay.
And of course, that's a tough sell. Who wants to buy a book on estate taxes? Who wants to even think about dying and your heirs paying taxes on it?
Mhm.
So it was such an interesting challenge to work on that and really see, well, how do I make this relevant, right? What are the benefits of doing estate planning now in terms of maybe it can save people money on taxes now, in addition to helping beneficiaries, afterwards. And what are the emotional buttons to push, as it were, that will get people to get a book so they can help their heirs not get, as it were, screwed out of their rightful inheritance.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And how do you make it
Really.
interesting? Like
Yeah.
not fun exactly, but I had to dig up stories about big estate tax, disasters where people
Okay.
wound up paying a lot of estate taxes, and I had to make a nice story out of it to get people's attention. So
Mhm.
and it wound up being one of their best-selling books. So
Wow. That's really awesome. Very cool. Very cool. Okay. You know, yeah. And, when I think about that, and because that's not my unique ability, as it is a lot of people listening, this might think like, well, how the heck do you even do that? Well, if that's not your unique ability, and you got to get a hold of somebody like David. and and because yeah, that makes my head hurt to think about trying to do that, because my mind just doesn't work that way. And so
And I, on the other hand, when I think about having to connecting people, it's like, how do I do that? What do I say? What do
total,
who do I
yeah,
connect to who? So it is interesting how everyone has their unique ability and what.
absolutely, absolutely, yep. And I've heard that for years. They're like, man, Kevin, it makes my head hurt to think about trying to do what you do, because my mind don't work that way. And I'm like, it's the easiest thing ever for me to do that. And so we all have what Dan Sullivan would call our unique ability, our God-given gifts, whatever you want to call them. We all have that. And you know what? When we kind of figure out what that is and figure out how to effectively use it, and then continue just getting better and better at doing what we do and using our gifts, it's pretty amazing. Like what you shared is such a perfect example of that. And so now that we've set a little bit of context here, and people have a little bit of an idea of what you do, and let's I'm going to reiterate the question for the benefit of our listeners. So, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons who completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And David, I'm just really excited to hear your story and hear your experience around this topic of relationships.
Yeah, I'm really excited to hear it too. See what comes out. Um, I think, certainly there've been a lot of people that have altered the course of my life in one way or another. But I think the biggest altering was probably when I came across the work of Jay Abraham.
Okay.
I didn't get to meet Jay and become friends with Jay until many years later.
Uh-huh.
But, encountering, I was in regular advertising. I got my start on Madison Avenue at Ogilvy doing, TV and radio commercials and print ads and all the usual stuff that people do in an advertising world, concerned with branding and with winning awards and all creativity and all that sort of thing. And then I came across Jay Abraham, who had such a different way of thinking about sales and marketing and generating customers. Like for instance, even something at that time that's so obvious to me now, as just maintaining a list, right?
Uh-huh.
And mailing to that list, whether it's regular mail or emails or whatever, and the value of a list and the value of untapped resources. I remember one thing that really struck me about Jay's thinking was how to use competitors, right? Like a lot of times people say, oh, they're my competitor, I don't want anything to do with them. And Jay's like, no, there's always, you never match up exactly with your competitors, right? There's always a little bit of difference. There's always like, you serve a little bit more of a high-end customer. They serve a little bit more of a low-end customer. There are leads that you can't close. There are leads that they can't close. Why not exchange those leads, right? Why not help each other? And
Yeah.
that to me was just such a beautifully counterintuitive way of thinking. And it's like, I was like, I want to do this. I want to be a copy thinker. I don't want to be a copy writer. And so I kind of left the world um, of ad agencies, traditional ad agencies, started freelancing and, started just doing direct response. I,
Okay.
hooked up with Jim Rutz, who was an, amazing, legendary, writer, and got into the world of kind of info publishing, books and newsletters, boardroom, the agoras of the world, the health publishers, the financial publishers, and really gave me a lot of opportunity to put what I learned from Jay into practice. Because of course,
Uh-huh.
as copywriting isn't just copywriting, it's also the marketing part of it. It's also the funnel part of it. It's the thinking part of it. Like, where does this email take you? What happens to people before they get the letter in the mail? What happens to people after? Should we have a telemarketing component of it? Um, where do they go? How does it work that they go from this website to this, to this page, to this page? And how do we follow up? How do we get a second purchase from customers? How do we maximize lifetime value? It was something Jay was very big on, and it was eye-opening to me at the time, right? What's the lifetime value
Yeah.
of a customer?
Yeah.
And then, of course, through working in that realm, I eventually got to do some work. One of the companies that I worked with was actually publishing a newsletter of Jay's.
Okay.
So that was the first time I met Jay and actually kind of worked writing for him. And since then, I've done some writing for him. And, he has invited me out to some of his masterminds out in California, presented at those masterminds on some hot seats, which was a
Nice.
lot of fun. So that's, it was quite a thrill and quite a kind of coming first full circle,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
get to meet someone and work with someone that changed my life like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's for you personally, David? What's been one of the just most exciting projects? Or maybe that's not even the right way for me to phrase it. What is some of the exciting projects that you've worked on that just you've had the opportunity to help out with and stuff?
Oh gosh. I really love variety. So it's always, when it's something new. I do some work for Procter and Gamble.
Okay.
So that's, to be able to work with them on their, subscription-based stuff, which was very new to them,
Uh huh.
right? Selling by subscription, and to be able to work with them on some really eco-friendly projects that they were doing, and to be part of that development of that, because it was, it's so new, not only it's not like I was working on Ivory soap that's been around for like 300 years, right?
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
was stuff that was still in development. They were still, you know, developing this cutting edge stuff and working with it. So, and of course, working with a big company like that is so different. I mean, it's frustrating in some ways because it's such a big company,
Uh huh.
but in other ways, it's like, oh my God, they just know their stuff. Like if you say to them, who's the avatar? They'll like take out this movie that they have. Well, we went to their house and we interviewed 400 people, and here's some clips that we put together. And then
Wow.
we had $2 million worth of research done to do a psychological in-depth study of it. It's like, wow. It's like, some customers, you say, who's your avatar? They go, I don't know. I think it's some woman. She's maybe 40 and she's educated and she just wants to buy the product or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and just, P&G is a company with a real culture. They have very definite ideas about what they do, how they do it, how they communicate. The Procter and Gamble one-page memo. Um, I got to learn. I got to learn from that and what that was and how that's such a great way to communicate and lay out a proposal. So you can see I don't always enjoy the writing so much as I just enjoy the learning. Like,
Yeah.
oh,
Totally.
what is this going to be an opportunity to learn, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah. I am the same exact way. I just love the learning my craft and the experiencing of it and figuring, oh, that worked really good. I'll do more of that. You know,
yeah,
and that discovery process is just so exciting to me. And just
turning it back around to Jay too. One of the things I learned from Jay was the value of working with different people, different industries. He always talks about how he is so good at what he does because he takes from this industry and he brings it in here, and he takes from this industry and brings it over there. And I feel like both in my writing, right, in every like working on that estate planning book, I
uh-huh.
learned so much from having to make estate planning interesting.
Yeah.
I learned so much from having to make, whether it's laundry detergent or toilet cleaner, or whatever it is, interesting. I learned
Mhm.
so much from having to make a financial newsletter interesting. Oh God, another newsletter about, income investing. How do you make that interesting, right?
Yeah.
Well, you kind of turn it into, getting checks in your mailbox, and then, royalties. It's like did a sitcom and you're getting royalties.
Uh-huh.
There's so much that you learn from each thing.
Yeah.
So I think that, is part of what I love about writing, what I love about being confronted with new problems.
Yeah. Yeah. So with where you're at right now, David, you've been doing this for decades. You know, I know for me personally, I will be 59 years old in 6 more days. And
Yeah.
I feel that at 59 years old, I'm just now really starting to figure stuff out.
I know the feel. I know exactly that feeling. It's like, wait a minute, right? I'm just starting. Things are coming together and making sense, and I guess that's the wisdom of getting older or whatever. But
Yeah.
it really is an amazing thing. And sometimes people say, "Oh, you're so good, you know so much." It's like, no, I just, you do it enough times, you start to see patterns, and you
Yeah.
start to say, "Oh, I've seen this problem before."
Uh-huh.
And it may not be that exact problem, but I mean, it's really something I learned from Jay in a certain way too. It's like there are patterns, right?
Yeah.
This is like this. This pattern is like this, right? This was solved before. There's a template. There's something, behind this. And when you start to recognize patterns, it's very powerful. I try to teach that with writing.
Yeah.
It's like if you can start to see, oh, this is this type of promotion. This is this type of promotion, right? This is a, put the guru up front promotion. This is a, system promotion. This is a over the top claim promotion. This is a more subtle, like, no, we're not braggy. We're just, telling you some facts kind of promotion.
Yeah.
And you can decide then, okay, I want it to be more like this. I want it to be less like this. What do I learn from what this person did? What do I learn from what this person did to do that same type of thing?
Yeah. Yeah. So with where you're at right now, what do you see? What do you see as your biggest opportunities going forward from here over the next year or two?
Well, I'm working at creating products.
Okay.
So I'm kind of enjoying that. I've got uh, a group coaching uh, called the Inner Circle. I've got
Uh-huh.
a copywriting course, and I've got a course on coming up with ideas called Idea Power.
Okay.
Uh, so I think that's an opportunity to kind of, reproduce myself, as it
Yep.
were,
Yep.
right? At the same time, I really love work. I really love continuing to work with people one on one and solve problems in
Mhm.
that way, learn about business. Because, of course, if you're selling people products, you're not really getting that same interaction, right?
Yeah.
You're not learning in the same way. You're not meeting people in the same way. I mean, I love this. One of the things I love about copywriting is all the interesting people that
Yeah.
I've met
Yeah.
because of that.
Yeah.
Uh, so I kind of look forward to doing a blend of both, blend of consulting and coaching and a blend of product creation.
Yeah. Yeah. That's been my thing too. Is I just feel I have been able to been blessed to meet so many just amazing entrepreneurs, amazing people, and like and continue to get to meet just more
Mhm.
people that are just doing such big things and making such an impact in the world.
They're an
And
interesting bunch, aren't they? I mean,
yeah,
people that create a company, people always say to me, not always, but people occasionally say to me, wow, you got your own business, it's like that's really risky. And I'm like, no, I write. People need writing, and they hired me to do writing. It's not like I created a widget and then I have to go out and sell that widget, or
yeah,
it's not like I was a manager for a big company and then hung out my shingle as a consultant and it was hard to sell. I've got like a real product, that I like
yeah,
writing. People need words.
yeah,
So I've always had a lot of admiration for people that form companies that have to have employees and make stuff and provide a service and have support and
yeah.
a million and one other things.
That's right. I totally am right with you on that, David. I remember years ago, my friend Dan Cushell invited me on it to just come visit him, and he wanted to give me a tour of his business,
Mhm.
and I did that, and I remember that day going there into this like the business district in Phoenix there, and meeting him at his office, and he took me around. We went on like this 2.5 hour tour, and he took
Right.
me around to all the different departments and, and introduced me to all these different people in these different places, and and he had about 175 team members and stuff. And when we get back to his office a couple hours later, he's like, "Well, what'd you think, Kev?" And I'm like, "Dan, I am like so impressed with what you have built here. And yet the idea of me doing this makes me want to do, I just wouldn't want nothing to do with it." I'm
You
more
know,
like you, David. I just like sitting here at my home doing my thing.
you know, I understand every once in a while I understand it because I had a couple of experiences where I've had people doing some stuff for me. And I remember specifically one time where I said, "Where did this come from?" And they said, "Well, I thought I had an idea for something." And so I talked to the design person that we work with, and then I had them do the thing, and now here's the thing. And I'm like, wow, this happened totally without me. Like, in no way did I have anything to do with this. And they created this. And now I know how entrepreneurs feel, right? When
Yes.
the company sort of runs without them,
Yes.
right? It's a nice feeling.
Yeah. 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 That makes sense for sure. Well, I'll tell you, I really appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation, David. And for anybody that's listening in on this, going, man, Kev, I really like David. I'm really intrigued by what he does. You know, maybe they're even thinking like, dang, maybe, I mean, he's worked for these companies. Maybe he might even be able to take a look at my stuff. How can people find out more about you and what you're doing? Any resources, any websites we can share with them with the show notes?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. There's speaking of writing.com
Okay.
is where they can get a couple of free reports, free report on copywriting, free report on creativity. And there's some, some other resources there. They can find out about, the group coaching and the copywriting course and the creativity course. And there's even a contact form where they can get in touch with me.
Perfect. Perfect.
So
Awesome. Awesome.
speakingofwriting.com.
Okay. Awesome. So I'll make sure we include that.
All right,
Um,
thank you.
so I want to make sure too. I mean, any last thing you feel compelled to share before we call it a wrap, David?
Yeah, it's funny. We've talked a lot about a lot of things and nothing about copywriting. So I, I I feel like the one thing I would like to say about that is that at least the way I teach it, um, it's not, people think it's about technique and it's about formulas and it's about templates and it's about getting the words on the page and do I start with a story and how do I the benefits and the features. And it's really just about tapping into your own inner salesman and inner persuader. And it's the one thing I really teach is just moving people to get in touch with that, right? Because people write stuff and it sounds like a sixth grade book report. And yet if you say to them, what's so great about your product, they'll beautifully articulate it, right? Or if you say to them, what would you say to someone that was thinking of buying it? Well, I'd say, well, so why the hell don't you write that in your copy? And
Yeah.
and so that's kind of what I do is just kind of keep them on track to getting that down onto the, page, into the script, into
Yeah.
the into the sales page.
Yeah.
Because that's really what it's all about. It's just you're selling to one person. Don't write stuff that you would be embarrassed to read out loud to people. And
Mhm.
do write what you would say to someone, sitting across that table from you or
Isn't that interesting? Because you're right. You know, when we're just so if we were talking with our best friends
Mhm.
and they wanted our help with this, we would just go into this mode of just bringing our best foot forward to help our friend who we just cared about and stuff. But
Mhm.
yet, when we, like you said, we try to write about what we do, and we're trying to we think about it differently, and it comes out way different.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and we don't write like we talk.
And it comes out sounding like everything else sounds
Yeah,
like, because that's what you kind of is in your head, right? It's like,
yeah,
it's not your fault that you're unable to, imagine a better way to, and it sounds like what people are used to reading and it just sort of bounces off them.
yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and AI, really doesn't help with that because it even more sounds like what came before. So it's like this kind of vicious cycle of things. So I'm kind of advocating a getting back to basics of,
Yeah,
speak from your heart. That's what people respond to,
that's
care
right.
about,
That's
care
right.
about the consumer.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you are so right. And when we just come from the heart, and people can just tell that we genuinely care about them and just want to serve them and stuff. They totally feel that, and they're like, because people they're looking for real, meaningful connection and relationships with
Yeah.
people that can truly help. And
Went to went to a Gary Halbert seminar the first time. And the first thing he had us do was write a letter to our mothers.
okay,
Living, dead, didn't matter. Write a letter to your mother, and it was like, because that's where it starts from. Like, what would you say to your mother? How would you wouldn't bullshit your mother. You wouldn't use some copywriting formula.
yeah,
Um, you want to convince your spouse to go to a movie. You want to convince your spouse to eat Mexican food instead of, Chinese food. You don't look for a template and go, what's the template for convincing my spouse to,
yeah,
eat a certain kind of food? What do I open with a story? Like once, this happened to me, well, I'm just like you. I like, Mexican. Like you don't do that. You just, know the person and you persuade them. And that's what copywriting is and where it needs to come from.
that's right. That's right. Well, David, I really appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation today and just share from your heart. And I'm just really excited to get this out and to share it with a lot of other entrepreneurs, founders, and CEOs because I just I know how impactful it's going to be. And it's right from the beginning. My goal has always been twofold with this podcast: to give people like yourself the just give you the opportunity to be able to honor and just show appreciation for somebody who's had such a profound impact on your life like Jay has, and then for the listeners who are also entrepreneurs, founders, and CEOs to just inspire them to place
Mhm.
a more intentional focus on creating more real, meaningful, rewarding, and profitable relationships in their own lives. And thanks to you, we definitely delivered on that today, David. So I really appreciate you. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. And yeah, thanks so much.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's always good to talk to you. And I hope this is helpful to people out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thanks again.
No,